Good. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Cade Museum for our Rotary Club of Gainesville Tuesday meeting. Please be sure to silence your cell phones, and if you're watching on YouTube, please register your participation by sending an email to info@rotarygainesville.org. Up first, to lead us in song and pledge, Pete Enwall.
Thank you. I had some work to do around my house, and so I got this handyman to come over, and I gave him a list, about 10 things, and so I let him work, and he was sort of finished quick. You know, I went up to him and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "I'm done." I said, "Okay, well, let me look at your work." And it turned out that he'd only done half of the list. And I said, "How come you only did half of the list?" He said, "I only do odd jobs." I didn't say they were going to be good. All right, I'm going to invite Laurie Vidal to come up and sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game with me, because he is a former Florida baseball player.
Is he?
Yeah.
They got a good team.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever come back, 'cause it's root for the home team.
It's a shame.
'Cause it's 1-2-3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. The flag is behind me. Would you join me in pledging allegiance to our flag? I'm going to turn my back on you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pete. And for our invocation today, Laurie Vidal.
Thank you. You know, I spent a little time looking into our speaker today and his organization in preparation for this prayer, and I got to thinking about it. Watched the video online; it's fantastic, and seeing so many of you in the video working on these houses. And I got to thinking that I'm married to a very special lady, 54 years this month. And we both were AGH babies and went straight from AGH to our home. Hers on Northwest 4th Street and mine on Northwest 10th Avenue. And those are the only houses we ever knew. And just what that provided for us, and then to see what y'all are doing and how special it really is. So let's pray together. What a blessing to have the incredible memories of stability and comfort by being able to grow up in a comfortable home throughout our life. Many of us have had that vision realized in our lives. What a realistic and admirable vision for an organization to declare the vision of safe homes and communities for everyone. We ask your blessings, Heavenly Father, by providing for those in need to be able to experience rebuilt homes, revitalized communities, and rebuilt lives. Refresh, renew our spirits to continue the vision of rebuilding together in our Rotary Club. It has created such amazing personal experiences for the volunteers and homeowners, working together and rebuilding lives in the process. I pray expectantly in the name of the rebuilder of lives. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. We invite our guests and visiting Rotarians to remain standing to introduce yourselves to our club.
Yeah, wherever we're at in the room. Guests, please stay standing. Who do we have? Anybody? There we go.
Fellow Rotarians, Melanie Shore, it is my honor to have my guest today, visiting from the Sunrise Club of a Rotarian, Jonathan Dreyer.
Thank you for joining us today. And now, please join me in welcoming our Feastmaster, Matthew Brady, to the podium.
Thank you, but I want to do that again after I say this. I want to say thank you to over 1,500 volunteer hours, to over 88 corporate sponsors, and to all that attended and helped. We had almost 1,700 attendees. Yes, and we had well on pace. We got some final numbers to go, but we are well on pace to meet the objectives of all 3 grant recipients. And that is accredited to all of you and so many more. And so I would ask for one final round of applause for all of you. Thank you.
And now, to bring some entertainment for the club, John Gregory.
Since St. Patty's Day is next Monday, not Tuesday, I thought I'd go ahead and give you a nice little poem here. It's called Grave St. Patty's Day. The Gators are just on firish. They don't wait to get down to the wirish. They're basketball bound, make the other team frown. Gators don't need the luck of the Irish. Walking through a graveyard, Mary Kate was being brave. The headstone read, "Here lies a politician and an Irish knave." See, a knave is like an unscrupulous man. It hit her Irish bent. She didn't know what it meant. Faith now, I wonder how they got 2 men in one grave. The Irish priest to his car's speed he'd not attend. Cop pulled him over and the priest tried to defend. Been drinking? The cop wanted to know. Only water, said the priest, implying no. I smell wine. Priest says, my God, he's done it again. An Irishman who one day went totally out of his way got shot, forsooth, but he was bulletproof. He was called Rick O'Shea. Happy St. Patty's Day.
And now we have Dink Henderson joining us for a craft talk. So Dink last gave his craft talk to our club 39 years ago. He is the owner and president of Henderson Engineering, and he's here to update us on his life a little bit since then.
Thank you, Jenna. I am Dink Henderson. I'm that quiet guy that sits in the back there. So I want to give you a little overview since you don't hear from me much, and it's been 39 years since my last craft talk. First, I want to talk about my family. First, the love of my life and my rock, my wife, Peggy. I met her back in the early 80s when she was a resident at Shands in anesthesiology. Back in those days, there weren't many women in medicine, believe it or not. One of her superiors said, go home and have babies, you shouldn't be a doctor. So, but anyway, she did anesthesia at Alachua General, where I was born, and also later at North Florida Regional until she retired. I have 3 children. Jay, who is from my previous marriage, and he's out in California designing and building townhomes. I got a bonus when I married Peggy, 2 beautiful and very smart daughters, Kelly and Erin. Kelly is up in Wisconsin now. Her husband travels all over, so she moves around. We're very fortunate to have Erin living right next door to us right now. We have 2 beautiful granddaughters, Caroline and Josephine. Caroline is a sophomore at Syracuse, and Josephine is a freshman at SMU in Dallas. They're both doing well. I'm a native Gainesvillian. I was born at HEH. We lived in Fort White first, where our family had a lumber manufacturing business. And when I was about 4 years old, we moved into Gainesville, and we moved right up here on South Main Street, a little house there, and lived there about a year. I don't know if anybody remembers this. What I was fascinated with back then was trains used to run right down the middle of Main Street about every week or so, so I played trains all the time. After that, we moved again down to Kirkwood, right off of South Main Street, where I grew up. A beautiful place to grow up back then. Made wonderful lifelong friends there. I went to school, J.J. Finley, all the way through University of Florida. Graduated, in 1966 with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. That was the Vietnam era, so I went to Naval Officer Candidate School up in Newport, Rhode Island. From there to a destroyer out of San Diego, a couple of tours in Gulf of Tonkin as an outpost communication ship and refueling helicopters and that kind of thing. I was very fortunate, unlike some of my peers in that war, never to be shot at. And happy to return to, eventually return to Gainesville. I went to work for the engineering firm Black Crow and Eidsness. Some of you, there may be a few people in here old enough to remember them, but they designed all the wastewater and water treatment plants here in Gainesville, and a lot of them throughout the state of Florida. My job was what we called underground utilities, which was all the pipelines, pump stations, transmission mains, et cetera. And I worked real hard at that for about 13 years. So that was the utility engineering phase of my life. Black Crow and Eidsness, I worked for them until 1983. In that period, CH2M Hill, if you've ever heard of them, they bought us out. Now they've been bought out by somebody else. But first 7 years I was in Clearwater, and then they brought me back to Gainesville. In 1983, I left and joined Harris Green. Some of you remember Harris. That was what I call local engineering, site planning, drainage, master planning, working for people that want to develop property. We brought on Gene Quinn, my partner. Harris retired and became Henderson and Quinn. 1993, we split. Gene, we kept the same office building that we built right down here on, again, South Main Street. We still have it. We split, and he went into DOT road transportation type engineer, and I stayed in what I was doing. And then I gradually morphed into more what I do today, the last 20 years or so. My craft is managing land trust and the engineering that's associated with it. My background is very helpful. Some of you know this is a highly regulated community. If you're in real estate and you work to try to site businesses and things here. This is about as tough as it gets in this county. So that all comes in. Now, how did I get in the land trust business? My father and his other 5 siblings were in the lumber manufacturing business until 1959. 1959, and I admire the fact that they stayed partners, trusted partners their entire life, and that was a great advantage to them. But they got out of the lumber business and went into the property business, and they bought a lot of raw, undeveloped property, a lot of wetlands, and all kinds of environmental problems on those properties, but they did buy them. And my brother Fred and I are still managing that property. That's what we do. People ask me, what do you do? I work for my cousins. Because, it's just grown into a huge family and a lot of other partners. My father loved putting partners together rather than borrowing money from the bank. So still working for him. So that's what I do. That's my craft. And my wife says, you're 81, isn't it about time to retire? Well, I can't retire until we finish with this land and sell it to somebody. But one other thing before I leave, community service, Rotary, of course, for 39 years, which has been a great pleasure. I just really love working with good people like we have, doing good things. And that's what we do here at Rotary. I was also, I also worked with my fraternity for 10 years. I see Doug Thompson, Bob Watson isn't here, but we worked together on that. I've been active in the First Presbyterian Church since the 80s. I've been trustee and treasurer for the last 16 years. In about 2004, I joined the Community Foundation. It was the Gainesville Community Foundation back then, and then it became the Community Foundation of North Central Florida. We have several, Eric Godet, Marilyn, several board members in here. And Barzella Papa started there, and she's not here today, but she's a Rotarian. And she's been a director since a couple of years after I got there, and she's done a fantastic job. That's a great organization. One thing that enabled us to do is some of the property that we had back then, my brother Fred was very active in the Bread of the Mighty Food Bank for years, and he was board member and chairman, and they were getting booted out of their rental space, had to have a place to go, and by giving some property to the to the foundation, they were able to help the food bank purchase their new location. So that's one of the neat things that a community foundation can do. And like I say, Barzal and Patrick has done such a great job with the food bank since that time. So that is really it. I think, as you know, we have a lot of poverty in this county, and I think what we do here is really important, along with the food bank and the community foundation, and let's just keep doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dink. And now please join me in welcoming our president, Ryan Thompson.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome, Rotarians and guests. Thank you, Dink. I really appreciate you sharing your craft talk with us. And John, you got a little better this week. I appreciate that. Thank you. Putting in that extra effort. It doesn't go unnoticed. Linda and John Thomas were at PETS. That's the statewide training for incoming area governors and president-elects. I am proud to announce that our club, in the first half of this Rotary year, so that's July through December, is the top giving club in our district. That's to the Polio Foundation. That's to the tune of $10,375. The next closest club was St. Augustine at $7,900 and Jacksonville at $7,800. So a sizable margin there. So the board of directors met last night, and I'm pleased to introduce Felix Haynes as a new member of our club. I don't know if Felix is with us today. That's unfortunate. He's been with us the past few weeks. I'm sure many of you have already met him. He's transplanting from Plant City, and looking forward to getting to know him better. We have several events, and it's really easy to remember what date because they're all falling on the same day. So the Gainesville Opportunity Center, their bike day, this is their 4th annual bike day. If you remember, we supported them last year. The board agreed last night to support them again this year at the $500 sponsor level. That gives us 2 riders. We could have additional riders for a nominal fee, which I'll share if anybody's interested. But that is April 5th. Check-in is at 8 o'clock and the ride starts at 9. Also on that day, Rebuilding Together, something we've been planning for about 8 months, I think, is also on April 5th. We'll be getting out with the rebuilding crew and helping a very deserving family, and looking forward to that opportunity. And then Tony Barr was sitting next to me and shared that he is speaking to the Data Science Institute at the University of Florida on April 5th. And that's from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30. He'll be sharing his programming work on SAS and his new venture, Amore. So that'll be exciting. So if you're able to join that, I know you'll enjoy it. And at this time, I'd like to invite Chris Cano up to introduce today's speaker.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Today's featured speaker, R.D. Bonnaghan, grew up in the Pittsburgh area, but has lived in Florida for the past 25 years, 18 of them here in Gainesville. He met his partner, Megan, at UF in a course on utopian literature. She's now a cataloger at the public library. R.D. took his own BA in English on the road when he graduated, completing 2 terms of national service in AmeriCorps programs, where he experienced rebuilding together for the first time. And the rest, as they say, is history. He's now the executive director of the 2-time award-winning Greater Gainesville Small Nonprofit of the Year, Rebuilding Together North Central Florida, celebrating 20 years of repairing homes, revitalizing communities, and rebuilding lives this year. Outside of his work life, RD escapes the harsh realities of parenting his middle schooler with a pressure washing simulator, and by filling his sweet tooth with baked goods and bagels. He enjoys spending time with his family, hiking, traveling, and seeing live music. As a board member of Rebuilding Together, I have had the privilege of seeing firsthand how RD has helped grow our mission and foster an incredible culture that truly makes an impact in Gainesville, and the surrounding area. Please join me in welcoming RD Bonnaghan.
Wow. So I feel like everyone's dressed up for me in their green, which I know is not true, but like, let me have it. And I'm watching to see when my slideshow will come up. And while I wait for that, I want to hit really quickly on the fact that we are celebrating 20 years as an organization in the North Central Florida area with Rebuilding Together. We started as a grassroots effort here, and many of the people in this room were on the ground floor 20 years ago when we did that. And so without this particular Rotary Club, I don't know that there would be a Rebuilding Together North Central Florida. And I wanted to just take this moment to acknowledge that and to appreciate some of the folks who are here today. And then I want to go really off script here and ask Ryan to come forward for a moment so that I can recognize him for y'all's participation last year. I have just a little token of our appreciation, and I'm sure he'll show it to you if you ask. But again, in our gratitude from Rebuilding Together to this Rotary Club for the impact that you have made in our 20-year history. Okay. It's a commemorative photo from last year's project, and he'll show it to you. Carefully, because it's glass. Awesome. Okay, so the Rebuilding Together mission is best summed up through stories. And so I'm going to take a brief moment and tell you about this woman that you see on the screen right now. This is a woman named LaFawn, and she has a Rebuilding Together story. And I'm going to tell a really short version of it, and I'm going to urge you to read more about it in the booklets that are on all of your tables. But when we met LaFawn, we actually found her through some partnering agencies who had gone out to build a simple ramp for the front of her house. We have a partner agency that does that. They do that really well. We're a collaborative organization, so this is pretty common. And when they got into the house, they were like, oh my gosh, this is way too much for us. We don't know what to do with this. So they called Rebuilding Together, and we found at LaFawn's house that there were really significant damages. And so through getting to know her and taking her on as one of our clients, what we found was that there were really significant problems, many of which stemmed to a water heater explosion earlier in her life in which she lost 2 family members. And so this is a story, I think, that ties together a key piece of Rebuilding Together, which is that for most people, your home is about health and safety and comfort. And for LaFawn, that was not true. Right? LaFawn did not feel safe or healthy or comfortable in her house. She felt devastated by what had happened to her there. And so my team, over the course of working with her, heard this story slowly, right? Because no one tells you this the first time they meet you. And so it took us weeks of working with Miss LaFawn for her to open up about some of these things. And as we found out more and more about her story, it became our sort of personal mission to bring back that feeling of health and safety and comfort to the home where she spends most of her time, the place where she lives. And so I'll never forget one of the very first active volunteer days. This is after our staff talking to her for weeks and weeks. We came in, and to start the project, we had removed so much of the damaged material, and we were scrubbing the walls, because you can't paint the walls until they're clean, right? And so we were doing all the paint prep things that you need to do to get started on the project. And she came out in the middle crying about how much better she already felt. And we hadn't actually done any work yet. And so I think that's the story of Rebuilding Together. It's this opportunity to meet people where they are, to connect with them at a real human level about something that we all really care about and have in common. Our homes are sacred places to us. I love that today's invocation was inspired by Rebuilding Together. I mean, this is church for me, right? Doing this kind of work, meeting people in these kind of places and hearing their stories and being part of it in some way. So here's the mission of Rebuilding Together up on your screen. We repair homes, we revitalize communities, and we rebuild lives. So with that last part, I want to just make a quick footnote, because I think a lot of people hear this story and they think, oh, you rebuilt Miss LaFawn's life, right? Like that's what we did. Well, sure, but Miss LaFawn also rebuilt parts of everyone that she touched throughout the course of that process's life. Everyone who worked on that house has a connection that they didn't have before, came away with something that left them feeling like they got the best deal out of working with Rebuilding Together. Miss LaFawn definitely thinks she got the best deal, but I don't. I think I did. And I think most people who worked on that house similarly feel like they got the best deal. So let's break it down for the data people in the room to some of the sort of nuts and bolts of how this kind of a program works. When someone like Miss LaFawn calls us, we send a team out to look at the house, and they use this inspection checklist that you can't see because it's really tiny, but here's what you need to know about it. We developed our process with the National Center for Healthy Housing, and they helped us determine the 25 things that we should look for when we go to assess a house that have an actual impact on how people live in their home. So these are things about the home. These are things, many of these are things that a building inspector would also notice, right? A building inspector would say, oh, does the roof leak? That's important to me, right? Is the foundation stable? That's important to a building inspector. But a great story that I probably told at this club last time I spoke was about a man whose house met the building code, but because his front yard was made out of sand with no concrete sidewalk, and because he relies on a wheelchair to get around, his house didn't work for him. And so that's what this 25-point checklist does, is it helps us prioritize people and the way that they interact with their house, as well as the nuts and bolts of how the house works. So our critical repair program is the one we've been doing for 20 years. I dare say we've been doing it for more than 20 years, but we got our IRS letter 20 years ago, right? So that's what we're celebrating this year. But this mission has existed for a really long time. Because a house like Miss LaFawn's has so much extensive work going on in it, this critical repair process often takes multiple weeks, often multiple months. But not every repair can wait that long. So we have an emergency repair program that's designed to triage the worst problems and the things that actually make the house actively work. So if you have a roof leak and you don't fix it, then you have a wall problem. And if you don't fix it, then you have a floor problem and a cabinet problem and a subfloor problem. And so our emergency repair program is designed to help us get to homes quickly, to do simple, quick repairs that will triage the situation, that will allow us the luxury of taking some more time to do the critical repair program. Back in 2008, we were involved in a coalition that was helping folks pay their utility bills. And what we found at that time was that there was not a lot of prevention going on in helping people manage where those utility costs were coming from on the front end. So we were part of a coalition called the Community Weatherization Coalition, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that because that could get its own speech here and probably has and will. But the short version is this is a low-hanging fruit kind of program that makes really cheap modifications to folks' homes. It's for homeowners and for renters, and it's designed to immediately bring down the utility bill so that people can afford to pay it themselves. We have a Safe at Home program, which is sort of a chunk of the critical repair program as well, but this happens independently of that at some houses as well. Some folks call us just with needs to age in place or to modify the house based on a recent surgery or a change in the way that they need to interact with their house. And so we have a program that looks specifically at that and addresses those needs. And our newest program is actually finally a full program. We're working with Alachua County to try and do something to manage utility costs for low-income renters. So we have this really cool new partnership with the county where what we do is we make deals with the landlords to sign affordability commitments to keep the housing available to low-income people, and we front the money to help make high-cost energy efficiency repairs that then directly impacts low-income renters' utility bill. And so it's sort of a win-win-win all around. The renters get stabilized rent and low utilities. The landlords get real improvements to their property. And Rebuilding Together gets to help move the needle on rental housing, which has been something that's been so hard for us to get into because of some of the challenges. And we have some really smart local people who came up with a lot of the ideas for the infrastructure of this program, and I'm so proud to have been one of the partners to turn it into reality. Okay, so where do we get the money to do all this work, right? Like, this is really interesting, but it also sounds expensive. I mean, any one of those scope items that we were talking about is pretty expensive. I'm really proud at this moment to show this chart with the diversity of funding that it has. These, again, probably too small for you to see, but I think the important story that this chart tells is that we're not super reliant on any one funder, right? We have our money coming from diverse places, and that allows us to continue services despite adversity in any one key area of those things. If we have a rough year for corporate sponsorships, we can make up for it in some other way. If we have an uncertain year, or we have, you know, a specific grant that we've always gotten that decides they're going to fund something else, we can generally make it work with some of our other funding, and I'm really proud of that. And I like to always point out at a meeting like this that one of the chunks, one of the top green ones, is through our corporate sponsorships and our nonprofit partnerships, like Rotary, right? So Rotary is one of those chunks as well. And then I always shout out our sponsors at a meeting like this, specifically when our sponsor is on the list. So you'll see Rotary on there as well. And we really, really appreciate the role that this Rotary Club in particular has played at Rebuilding Together and in our mission over the last 20 years. Okay, so lastly, just show and tell pictures, right? So here are some photos of what some of our houses look like before and after. These are the kind of accessibility repairs that we make. This is an example of one of our partnerships. We work with interior design students at the University of Florida. We get them out in the field. We roll up their sleeves. We get to put some of the things that they're learning on paper into action in the field. They end up having a great time. And they build those kind of connections like I was talking about us making with Ms. LaFawn. We give our young students the opportunity to make those kind of connections too. And in a lot of ways, it changes their lives, right? Like these are future Rotarians who are finding out that service is fun. Here's a bathroom that we worked on a while ago that I've just kept this photo forever because it's actually the drain pipe that's holding that sink up in the picture on the left. And so these are the kind of repairs that, this is not an expensive project, right? I want to say we spent like $800 total in this bathroom to go from the left to the right on here. And these are highly meaningful things that we do. The together part, relationships, right? Here we are, making relationships. Food and storage spaces for food and places to prepare food and clean food. These are important things to point out. I always like to put some pictures of people who I know are going to be at a meeting in my slideshows. Here's one that's been around for a really long time. We love working with Rotarians, and we love, in particular, working with this group. And then this is, I think, just a great example of the envelope repair. So we always start at the outside in a home repair project, and we work in. And this is a great example of the kind of thing where, like, it doesn't make sense to put a new kitchen in behind that wall before you fix the wall so that the new kitchen is going to be protected in there. Okay. We're rounding the end, I promise. So what are some things that you can do? You've already heard it from other Rotarians, and you've got some flyers on your tables, but we are having a cross-Rotary collaborative project on April 5th. If you're going to one of those other events in the morning, maybe stop by and have lunch with us anyway. It'll be a really cool place to be. It'll be really fun, and you can have your own story like the one that I told about Ms. LaFawn, because that happens to us regularly at Rebuilding Together experiences, and I know there are a lot of folks in this room who will attest to it and have today in their interactions with me. And then, of course, there are other ways to get involved. And I'm not going to read down this list, but I am going to say that all of these opportunities are available to you through me directly or through our website. And so here's a photo of what that sort of looks like. It's rebuildingtogetherncf.org. And all the things at the top that I have circled are pieces that you might want to check out. Social media, we have an e-newsletter, we have places that talk about helping us connect with corporate folks or with church folks or with anyone that you might know that would be interested in this. And the easiest way to get involved, again, is to come see us on April 5th and to RSVP with some of the folks in this room who have been doing it a long time. And with that, if I haven't used all of the time available, I would happily take questions. This will be a tough one.
Artie, thank you. I really appreciate your leadership with your group and your team, that you get the young people that come into your group from all areas, and then also from UF. I have some other thoughts, but I really want to know what a pressure washing simulator is.
Great question. It's the best thing ever. It's a video game that looks like you're pressure washing. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, you can just go outside and pressure wash it. And you're right, but I have to like crank the thing up, and then I have to carry the heavy thing. And in this game, if I fall off a 4-story ladder, it doesn't hurt. It's amazing. It's so fun. I don't know, it's just like a mindless thing that makes it easier to have a 13-year-old living in your house.
Well, since Jacob's not here today, I'm going to ask a second question. Oh, is he here? Oh, man. So one
Ask
other
it
thing.
Together.
Actually, more of a comment, but I Shira Construction, I saw Doug had to step out. They are also a team leader group.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to make sure that people know that Doug does the same thing as we do. And so anyway, you have a lot of community partners, and we appreciate what you do in the community.
Thank you so much.
Hey, RD, I don't really have a question. I wanted to add to what he was saying. Before I ran Bread of the Mighty, I ran the Homeless Coalition. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is people are at risk of losing their housing or being evicted from their housing as a result of some of these issues. And so, one thing I don't think people realize is that rebuilding together is keeping people housed, right? It's not just improving the quality of their home. They're not making superficial fixes. They are actually keeping people in their homes, which I think is an amazing thing. I mean, that saves lives. And so kudos. I mean, RD runs an amazing organization that really helps people. So thank you, man. Yeah.
Oh, shucks. There's that saying about an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure, right? And I think there's something about that to the housing preservation game, especially if we're able to meet someone like Ms. LaFawn at a time when her project is doable at the Rebuilding Together price point. It's going to be significantly cheaper than trying to relocate her into a different housing situation. And so often, Rebuilding Together is a cost-effective way to do housing preservation, which leads right into Patrick's narrative. Thank you. I planted all these people here. Probably this one too.
So I'm curious about how many phone calls you get every day, what your waiting list is like, and what your process is for prioritizing projects.
Yeah, great question. I actually don't know the daily phone call number. It's probably in the like 5 to 10 range on a daily basis. Our qualified applicant list varies from like 50 to 100 at different points throughout the year. And the process for folks to get on that list is pretty easy. They just have to find out about us through someone else and make contact, and they will almost inevitably end up on the list. There's a somewhat rigorous process that we go through to pre-qualify people to make sure they meet the basic guidelines of the program. Someone, I think it was Ryan, maybe said, for very deserving families. What that means to us is that they meet the basic income guidelines, that they own the house, that the house is free and clear, not going to be repossessed by a bank, right? Like they're just basic things that we look at to determine whether folks are eligible for us to help. And we've been creatively trying to solve that problem. One of the things I love about our new rental program is that's something that for the first 13 years of my career, I said, no, we can't do that. We don't have a system. And in the 14th year, a bunch of smart people came to us with solution-based ideas, and we came up with an idea that would make people who were previously not qualified for programs eligible for different types of programs, right? So we're trying to think about housing really comprehensively. And we want people to come talk to us, whether we can help them or not, because we want to find what are the problems that we're not solving yet, and is someone else solving them that we can partner with, that we can point them in a direction where they can get those kind of services? Or can we just get smart people that we know in the community to think about what a solution to that might look like, so that we can develop another wait list for a different type of thing, right? Where we can actually say, okay, this is what our community actually needs in relation to housing, and is there a solution? And if not, let's make one, because we're here at the end of the day to meet the housing needs of our community, and to do that through a community, grassroots-based, relationship-based effort. And so if there is a way to do that, we're committed to finding it. And I think it's really, really fun to be part of an organization that thinks that way and that acts that way. And it's, again, all possible because people have been doing this a lot longer than I have and have been thinking about and solving these problems longer than I have. And all of it is built on the backs of the work of people who have came before me to do this work. And I think many of the people who have helped build that infrastructure are here in the room, and many of the people who will continue that infrastructure are here in the room, right? So did I get all of the pieces that you asked? Okay, great.
I was wondering how many houses you do a year, and then in your 20 years, how many houses have you all, been a part of?
Ask me that second part again in like July after I'm done counting.
Got it.
Because we're preparing for our 20th anniversary celebration to do a big comprehensive thing. I don't have a good answer to that one now, but I'll tell you, last year we did 41 houses through the top to bottom critical repair program. We did another 23 houses through the accessibility program, the Safe at Home, we call it, where it's aging in place type repairs. We did another certain number of those, 23, I believe it is. And then we did our first 12 of the rental assistance program houses. The goal for the upcoming year is to do 45. So we're like massively scaling that program this year. We're going from 12 to 45. The county has approved the funding that we're going to use to do that. So it's like happening as long as my staff are busy, and I assure you they are. And then we did, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's in this chart. It's something like 240 and change of the energy efficiency tune-ups. And 4 of those home energy tune-ups turn into like slightly higher upgrade. We put insulation in them or did kind of like smaller, not all the way critical repair projects at other 4 of those 240 or so that got the lowest hanging fruit. Education and light bulbs and, you know, the easy stuff to get to. Great question. The question was, are all of those in Alachua County, or if not, what is the footprint? The 23 accessibility projects were in Levy County. That's our newest county, and we're actually working on a disaster response contract with Levy County right now. That's our newest part of the service area. But for the first 18 of our 20 years, we were exclusively in Alachua County, and all of the other numbers outside of those 23 that I just gave you are in Alachua County.
You go ahead.
Oh, I'll repeat this one as well.
In the last year, have you worked on any hurricane-damaged homes?
We have worked on a smaller number than you might guess of hurricane-damaged homes. We are kind of positioning ourselves to be a long-term recovery agency that does that, and we have in the past. We did that after some storms a few years ago and 10 years ago, and when they sort of cross our path. The way that we're getting way more involved in that is because we have recently expanded to Levy County, which is a lot more coastal. And so we are running into more and more of it because we have broadened the geographic area to include places that are more impacted. But always, if you know of folks in Alachua County with storm damage type repairs, we are a great place to connect them so that we can find them those resources, whether it's us or not. We do plan to do a lot more of it. The funding that we're administering now is actually 2023 hurricane money. And so we're expecting, since 3 storms hit Levy County last year, that those funds will be coming from the feds and the state to do the long-term recovery there. And we are hoping that we are positioning ourselves well to be a good partner to the county and helping get that money to the people who need it.
RD, thank you for joining us today. It's amazing what you're doing with the program, how you continue to expand, and how easy and what a joy it is to assist you in helping renovate some of these homes. On behalf of you speaking to us today, we'd like to make a donation to the Child Center for Early Learning. And if we weren't connected with Rebuilding Together enough, Celine Hickey, who is Helen Warren's stepdaughter, has been a project manager with Rebuilding Together for some years, and she is now their community engagement specialist. She's led several of the programs that I've personally served on, and she's just a pleasure, and really appreciate working with her. And so just wanted to give Helen a shout out. So thank you. All right, next week's speaker is Dr. Doug Jones, the director for the Florida Museum of Natural History. The quote for the week: "The word abbreviation sure is long for what it means." And that's Zach Galifianakis. The Rotary Reading Safari drawing number is 926. 926. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
926 or 932? 2.